So continuing from our previous video, we looked at how we could install PostgreSQL on our local machine, and we looked at how we could set it up, but we didn't launch PostgreSQL. So we're going to do just that. So in this video, we're going to be launching the PostgreSQL server, and we're going to be introducing what it's all about. I'm going to be talking about databases and tables. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is to come to your search bar here and type pgadmin 4. So now as you're typing that, you would see that you get a recommendation. So when you installed PostgreSQL on your system, pgadmin 4 was also installed along with it. So now what pgadmin 4 is, it's a graphical user interface, a GUI, that allows you to be able to write SQL queries and get a result. So it's just like a text editor that allows you to write code, and at the same time it also allows you to execute those queries in the same environment. So for those of us who are not familiar with GUIs, GUI stands for graphical user interface. So it is simply an environment, or it is simply a visual that is made up of windows and widgets. So now this pop-up we are seeing right here is an example of a graphical user interface. So it's made up of a window screen. A window screen is always four-cornered and it has widgets on it. So that's just what it is in a nutshell. So you want to click on your pgadmin 4, and if you like, you can also pin it to your taskbar for easy access. So I will just do that, or rather, okay, I'll do that. So you pin to taskbar, you pin it to your taskbar. I don't know why that's not showing there. Okay, so just open it up, click on open. It was supposed to show anyway. Alright, it's showing now. So you open up your pgadmin 4 and you can start, and I would walk you through to its setting up, to how you can set it up. So you just give it some time and wait. Okay, so after it starts, now you can see it asks you to enter your master password. So now this password is not the same password you entered when you were installing it. This is a different password entirely. So you can make it to be the same password you entered when you were installing it, so as to not forget. So I would do just that. I would make it the same password that I made it during its installation. So once you do that, you click OK. So now you've started your server. You have not started your server yet. Rather, you've only just gained access to the graphical user interface. So I said graphical user interfaces comprise of window screens, which are most of the time square in shape, and widgets. So widgets are clickable icons. They can be clickable or unclickable. Yes, so that's what GUI is. So now you want to come here to servers. So this is where I will be giving a proper introduction. So now once you click on server, it means you are trying to start your PostgreSQL server. Now it prompts you for a password. So now this password you are going to enter here would be the password you entered when you installed PostgreSQL on your local machine. So I would enter that password as well. So mind you, I made my user password, that is the very first password I entered when I opened pgadmin. I made it the same password as the password I entered when I was installing PostgreSQL on my local machine, so that I would not forget, so that I don't forget. So now you can see the PostgreSQL server, and this is the database, and these are other privileged accesses that we will talk about later in the course. So now when you just click on the drop down arrow, you click on the drop down arrow and it shows you the default database. So now this is the default database that came with your PostgreSQL server. So what do I mean by a server? A server is an environment that enables you to be able to execute queries, in a nutshell. So like I said, I'm going to be trying to explain all about SQL as simply as possible. So now this is the default database that came with your PostgreSQL server. So now what is a database? So now a database is an environment. I'm using the word environment because it makes the course more relative to those viewing it and trying to understand. So a database is an environment that can hold multiple tables inside it. So it's an environment that can hold multiple tables or database objects. Now these database objects can be functions, can be variables, can be triggers. So this tutorial is specifically for analysis. So I will just be giving you the basic walkthrough on how you can be familiar to using SQL for analysis. So a database is an environment that can hold multiple tables and variables. So we will be creating our own databases shortly as well. So now this is where we're going to start to carry out our work, such as writing queries and getting a result. So database is an environment that has tables, and a table is an environment that can hold multiple rows and multiple columns. So we use rows to be able to hold multiple data. Rows and columns are used to hold multiple data. So it is the intersection of our rows and columns that gives us a cell in a table. So I will be explaining that more using practical examples, basically. So now this tutorial is just talking about giving us an overview, an introduction to what databases are and what tables are, and specifically we're going to be talking about data types. So what are data types? So now data types are the foundational blocks of every programming language upon which we write code to be able to get a result. So they're the foundational blocks of every programming language upon which we write code to get a result. So they are the link for us to be able to write algorithms and retrieve a result, basically. So now PostgreSQL has different types of data types. So we have data types that handle string values, numerical values, booleans, true and false, timestamps, dates. So we'll be looking at them step by step. Alright, so now the first thing you want to do now is to right click on your PostgreSQL server. So once you right click, you will see different options. So you want to come down here to query tool. So this is what we're going to be using to be writing our queries and all that. So you click on query tool. Now it opens up an environment for us. So the first thing we want to do here is to create a new database for ourselves and create a table inside our database. But before we do that, I'll be explaining and be showing us how we can be able to work with data types first of all, and what they actually mean, the different types of data types. So before you do that, you want to minimize your PostgreSQL graphical user interface, your pgadmin 4. You minimize that. Now on your desktop, you want to create a folder. So now this folder will have the file that we are going to be working in, writing our queries and all that. So you want to right click and you want to come here to new. So you come here to folder. I'll just call it SQL and you click enter. Then you want to double click your SQL folder, and inside you want to right click and you click on new. You come here to text document first of all, and I'll give it a name. I will just call it tutorial. Now if you will notice something in your system as you are clicking this, you would not see an extra letter here. You wouldn't see any extra letter. So what this simply means, this tells us the format of our file. I'll be explaining this, and I would also be explaining how you can be able to make yours visible on your local machine. So this tells us the format of our file. So what are file extensions? So they tell us the characteristic or the behavior of our file that we are creating. So what this simply means is that this file I'm writing is strictly for writing text. It is not in any programming language. It is just for writing text. So in order for us to be able to make our file SQL compatible, we would want to delete this txt and change it to SQL, changing our file extension format to that of an SQL file extension format. So but you will notice that you can't see yours in the first place to begin with, so you can't change yours. So I will show you how you can be able to make this visible. So just click on enter. Then now you want to click on view. So now I'm using a Windows 11. So for those of us using Windows 10, you will notice that you have something at the top here that says view. It's the same thing. So click on view. And when you click on view, for those of us that have Windows 10, at the far corner here, you would see something like this, file name extensions. So you just move your cursor here. After you have clicked on view, of course, you see an option here that says file name extensions. You want to click on that so that you can be able to see the extension of your file. So I've already clicked on mine, file name extensions. That's the reason why I'm seeing the txt here. So I'll just click on it again a second time, or just edit your file, delete the txt and change it to SQL. And after that, you click enter. Now it asks you, it shows you this prompt, this dialog box, telling you about, giving you some options, and you want to click yes. Click here. So now it has changed the source file to an SQL format. and you will notice that my file has changed and the source file is now SQL. So previously it was showing text format before, but after changing it to SQL, you can see it has changed. All right, so let's proceed. So now you want to go back to your pgadmin. Now, after you click your query tool, you discover that it showed you this screen here, this window pane, this environment. So you want to click on this icon here that looks like a folder. You want to click on it. So you click on that, and the folder we just created on our desktop, you want to come here to desktop because that was where we created the folder. So I'll click on desktop and I would scroll down to SQL, which was the name of my folder. Click on that, you click on tutorial.sql, and you click open. So right now we are now inside that file that we created, that we changed its extension, and you will notice that here on the pane you will see that we have tutorial.sql as well. All right, so let's start with data types. So the first data type we have is the numerical data type. So we have numerical data types. I'll just be listing them. So numerical. So now, if you don't want your SQL server to see a query that you are writing, you want to use your dash on your keyboard, the minus twice. You can decide to start writing. Now, if you want to increase your screen, you hold down your control and your plus to increase it. So now numerical comprise of integers and floating points. So what are data types? So I said data types are the building blocks for every programming language. So they are those elements, or they are the objects upon which we write code to get a result. So the first data type we have in SQL, it follows no particular order. You can write it, you can list them in whichever order you want. But I'm going to start with numeric or numerical data types. So they have two types, integers and floats. So they have two types, which are integers and floats. All right, so now in the case of SQL, so data types determine the type of values the table can have. So they determine the type of values the table can have, basically. So if I have an integer data type for a particular column in the table, it simply means that that column will have integer values. And if I have a column in the table that uses the float data type, so those values in the columns will have float data type. So what are floats? So floats are just another name for saying decimal values. So these are values that have decimal points. Yeah, so those are the two types of data types we have. And of course, we also have a data type called numeric as well. Numeric data type. So I'll be explaining all this intricately more. Now the numeric allows us to also store decimal points as well, decimal values. But it allows us to get a precision and how many numbers after our decimal. It allows us to get a precision and how many numbers after our decimal. We'll look into that properly. So now the next type of data type we have are the temporal data type. The temporal. So now under temporal, we have temporal is broken down into date, time, timestamp, and interval. Alright, so now date. This allows us to store values in a date format, in the sense that we can just the way we write our dates, like the days, the months, and the years. It allows us to be able to store our values in that form. And of course, the time, it allows us to store our values in hours, minutes, and seconds. And the timestamp allows us to combine. So this is a combination of the date and the time data type together into one. And then the interval, this allows us to get values within a specific period of time. So it allows us to get values that happened from one time frame to another time frame. Now these values, they are all written within a single quotation mark. I'll be explaining that too subsequently. They are written within a single quotation mark, all of them, but numerical values are not written within any quotation mark. Right. Then we have Boolean values. So these are true and false values. So these are true and false values. So they allow us to see if an event was either true or if an event was false. So that's all about data types. So we'll just stop here. So in our next tutorial, I will be showing you how you can be able to use these to create a table. First of all, we'll create a database, then we will create a table. Then we'll start our analysis. I will get a little bit familiar first before we start our analysis. Alright, so till next time, thank you.